We are talking about lockboxes. Yes, lockboxes. It's a controversial solution to child safety in Washington homes with parents and addiction issues. Yeah. State records show that kids in the child welfare system are dying or nearly dying at record rates. So what's the solution? Give the addicted parents a lockbox. Okay. Well, this is Washington State, so this is kind of just what we do. Does this make any sense at all? Kind of. Let's get into it. Here we go. Talking about lockboxes. Lockboxes. Love that Allen Iverson video. Talking about practice. All right. Let's watch the video.
Well, and here I have the kids' school records.
Danielle Steele of North Bend.
Well, and here I have the kids' school records.
Danielle Steele of North Bend has spent the last 10 years gathering evidence, trying to prove she should get custody of her 2 nieces and a nephew, while her sister, the kid's mother, goes to treatment. She says records of fractured bones, burns, and long stretches of missed school days show the kids are in danger.
Showing my nephew missing 52.99 days.
Wow. It's a lot of days.
You did it!
Danielle says an incident in the fall should have been the parents' last chance. Court records show her 3-year-old niece overdosed on tranquilizers.
CPS did not take the children away.
No, they did not, because they said that they did not have enough. There's enough evidence.
While CPS didn't remove the kids from the home, they did give the family a tool aimed at keeping the home safe. A lockbox.
I mean, that is a joke.
The King 5 investigators found early last year, DCYF started giving parents who use drugs like fentanyl lockboxes like this one. And the goal is to keep drugs out of reach so kids don't accidentally eat the pills or powder. But child welfare advocates say,
I don't know if you've, one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is today would have been my son's 29th birthday. And he died of an accidental fentanyl overdose about 1.5 years ago, February of 2023. So this topic is very important to me. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because otherwise I'm going to cry. And this is not news for crying people. This is news for reasonable people. So that's the road we're going to go down. But I don't know if you've ever been around anybody who has been wildly addicted to drugs, especially fentanyl. Yeah, they can't keep any aspect of their life together, especially keeping drugs in a box with a set of keys. That's just a no-go. They can barely keep the big components of their life together. Like, do I have a valid driver's license? Do I have rent money? Am I going to be kicked to the curb? Keeping their drugs in a box with the lock. It's so ridiculous. I get where it's coming from, but it's ridiculous nonetheless. All right, here's the solution. It's a tool, and yet it is such a harm reduction tool. All harm, no reduction, because you're like giving this box and going, well, I hope the kids are safe. Just use that box, put your gear in there, put your dope in there. And it'll all be good, right? Hey, are you using the box? Well, little Johnny and Susie are doing good, huh? Some just mental disconnect, right? This is Washington State. This is progressive. This is what we're doing.
Say that these lockboxes do not account for the highly toxic nature of fentanyl.
That is a true joke, and it's sad. It's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than a lockbox.
Even with a lockbox in the home, another crisis happened. 3 weeks ago, Danielle says the kids got their hands on drugs lying around the house.
The kids started getting into it. That's how they found it. And
None of it in a lockbox.
none of it in a lockbox, yeah.
No.
Nowadays.
In November, we reported on a law passed in 2021 aimed at keeping more kids with their parents. We found since then, more children in the state system are dying. State records show in the last 4 years, the number of kids in foster
Check this out. You've got some inverse things going on, right? Here we go.
care has plummeted, down 28%. But deaths and near deaths of children involved with CPS went up by 114.
Wow.
It's so much more than just a lockbox.
Do you think that you guys are doing this safely?
Yes.
Doreen Perez is an official with the state agency charged with keeping children safe, DCYF.
We certainly think that this is an opportunity to prevent harm. If it's not being provided, then there's no opportunity. And
without that, there's no opportunity to try and keep them safe.
DCYF uses several tools to keep kids safe. Services like offering treatment to parents, housing, childcare, parenting classes, social worker visits, and in the last year, a lockbox. Despite these safety nets, kids have suffered dire consequences.
Look at that poor kid. That's a baby, right? That is a baby. Babies don't deserve to die from drug overdoses. That's horrible. Now, what I would say is, let's get off that picture. That's just a tough picture to take, right?
Right there. He's just beautiful.
Ugh.
He's perfect.
Pamela Andrews of Port Townsend took in baby Otis after he was born last Christmas with fentanyl in his system. The CPS safety plan called for the mom to go into treatment and the father to move in.
So this is one of the things where you've got this misguided compassion. Let people do whatever they want. Let them take whatever drugs they want. It's all good. Let them live wherever they want that you see in the big blue liberal cities. Just let them do it. Yeah, we'll give you clean needles. We'll give you booty bump kits. We'll give you all this stuff. But then when you've got, people having sex because they have some crazy meth sex, that's the thing. And, the young lady isn't on birth control or the guy isn't using birth control or whatever. Somebody gets, pregnant and then they have a child and the child is drug addicted from day one. You remember we used to talk about crack babies? Well, now it's fentanyl babies or meth babies. So that's where this whole misguided compassion comes in. We just want to take care of our fellow human being, but not the babies that they have that are addicted to fentanyl, out of the womb. Just, there's this wild disconnect. Let's keep going.
With Pamela.
But I should have done more.
But what could you have done?
Ran away with him.
And then you're up on kidnapping charges. Right. I mean, everybody wants to do that. So, people know of kids that are in these horrible family situations. And I know the stats all say, hey, you got to keep the kids with their biological parents. Well, except if their, life is in danger. That's where there's this whole thing of, all right, well, but if the kids stay with the mom and dad, the real mom and dad, odds are they could overdose. And that's literally the stats that we're talking about. Kids overdosing or having near overdose, not deadly, but having overdose experiences.
Otis's father was given a lockbox and required to do a weekly urine analysis, but Pamela says it wasn't enough. State and police records show Pamela called CPS repeatedly about the father using drugs, buying urine to fake drug tests, and muffling the child's mouth when he was crying.
Aren't you supposed to do anything and everything? I mean, to try to save them? I mean, I don't understand where that fine line is for them. Why didn't you do something? Why?
Yeah, because the laws in Washington state dictate that people basically have free will, right? Everybody's responsible for everything. It's that misguided compassion again. If we just love them just a little bit more, it'll be good. Meanwhile, you got kids dying like this kid here. I mean, horrible.
Less than 3 weeks after the state decided the father could get custody of him, Otis was found dead. He was in his car seat, left in a bush on a nature reserve. He had meth in his system. Detectives found drugs and paraphernalia on the father. None of it was in the lockbox.
It's beyond heartbreaking. How can you do that to someone? And he deserves so much more.
King 5 spoke to 24 child welfare advocates who were all surprised these lockboxes are part of a safety plan, especially given the death toll associated with fentanyl. From prosecutors,
their solution to that problem is to provide a lockbox as opposed to taking the kid out of the house. That is shocking.
To social workers.
We can't. It is shocking. And what we're talking about is, and this has to do with the whole homeless issue as well, is, you used to have a certain standard for, well, those people are on drugs. But then when fentanyl came along, fentanyl only takes 2 milligrams to effectively kill you, right? Just boom, done. And that's where I think, smaller kids with less body mass, body weight, it doesn't take hardly anything to just boop, knock them over. So you've got a situation where you've got a drug that most of these folks don't understand. They understand that they've got, the people that they're trying to protect dying in record numbers or nearly dying in record numbers. But the actual drug of fentanyl is so strong and it is so addictive that people make all these decisions. And a lockbox? I mean, okay, I guess the logic would be if you hand out 100 lockboxes and one parent uses it and it saves some kid's life, then it's worth it. All right. But the bigger picture is you've got a bunch of drug addicted parents running around out there with kids that are being raised in these environments of just horrific drug addiction. That's the misguided that's where the compassion gets misguided, because how about those kids and their welfare and their future? Yeah, good luck, right?
Can't expect a parent who's actively using multiple times a day to remember to safely store their drugs.
Even a mother in recovery and currently using a lockbox says it would be hard to use while on fentanyl.
But like when it comes to fentanyl per se, and that type of drugs, I would have to say, no, they're not good enough because they aren't always used properly.
I have to get them things because their mom can't get them together.
Danielle Steele, whose niece overdosed on drugs last year, says the kids are still living with the parents. She's constantly worried, even with a lockbox.
Children have rights too. They should have rights. And they should have somebody who's looking after them when the parents are not doing it.
These are the kits here. Sometimes a lock bag is given to travel, as well as Narcan right here. Now, the kits cost up to $100, which the state pays for. And I asked, but DCYF didn't tell us how many boxes have been given out. They did say it's been a lot.
Does this problem all stem from the fact that the law that you mentioned in your stories is getting in the way, making harder for them to take kids away from their parents?
Well, DCYF says it is not the law, and actually it is fentanyl that is causing these kids to die. It's not keeping families together, which is what the law said that it was supposed to do. But if you look at that timeline, these kits did start going out as the law was implemented. And there could be a change in the law in this next legislative session. Joyce, Greg?
So what I would say there is that the timing of this law that, allegedly makes it tougher to take kids from their parents coincided with the influx of fentanyl. Now, what we saw is 2019, 2020, things starting to really heat up. And then when you had, Biden basically come into office and the southern border went from being, secured as well as you could have it secured by any president in the last 45 years to wildly unsecured and drugs just starting to pour across the border. That's when my son died in, February of 2023. He came along kind of the tail end of the real big push of all these drugs coming up. And it's since been, the numbers have gone down, but you don't have a secure border, and these drugs are coming into the United States at just record levels, right? I mean, you just crazy numbers, so many drugs coming in that my son, who bought a street Xanax and took it and, basically died, and we didn't find him until multiple days later. He was living on his own, had a girlfriend, all that kind of thing. I mean, the kid was 27 years old. And today he'd be 29, but he's not. I said I wasn't going to talk about it anymore, but, we're doing something different. So what I would say is that, can you blame fentanyl for some of this? Yeah, absolutely. But then you have to take into account, all right, we've got a drug that just, absolutely takes people out at the knees. And by that, I mean, just kills them straight up. These little kids. In 2021, a new state law was passed aiming at making it harder to take children away from their parents. The law, called the Keeping Families Together Act, was implemented in 2023, but many municipalities around the state enacted it earlier. That is at the same time that fentanyl really kind of roared into our consciousness as far as, oh my gosh, this is taking people out just left, right, and center, let alone babies and little kids and, maybe curious teenagers and all that kind of stuff. That's what we're talking about. And here's that statistic. State records show in the last 4 years, the number of kids in foster care has plummeted, down 28%. So you got way fewer kids coming into the system, but their deaths or near deaths are up by 114%. That isn't parents, that isn't foster parents beating the kids to death, right? I mean, that's the first thing you think of is, oh, what's going on? What's happening here? It's kids getting into fentanyl. It's kids, being exposed to it somehow. Just absolutely nutty. And here's that father who had the young child, and he had a lockbox, and he was supposed to be taking, tests. According to the Jefferson County Prosecutor's Office, Otis's father was arrested and charged, but those charges were later dismissed without prejudice. That means charges could be filed again. According to prosecuting attorney James Kennedy, there wasn't enough evidence to support criminal charges in Otis's death. So Otis is dead. Otis, the baby, is dead. And the dad has a known drug addiction issue. But because they couldn't prove that Otis died from drugs from the father, who was a drug addict, because they couldn't prove that it was done on purpose, they don't have enough evidence to file criminal charges. I mean, how messed up is that? I mean, where is the concern for the child's life? It's like, I couldn't stick it to the dad, so sorry, Junior, you're dead. I mean, that's literally what we're saying, right? The kid's caught in between the cracks of justice. King 5 spoke to 24 child welfare advocates who were all surprised these lockboxes are part of a safety plan. Prosecuting attorney Kennedy called it shocking that the solution to child endangerment is to provide a lockbox as opposed to taking the kid out of the house. Now, what I would push back with this, again, is news for reasonable people. This is one tool out of many, and we saw them listed of things that the Child Protective Services, has in their arsenal to handle these situations. And this story obviously is focusing on, a lockbox is going to be the be all and end all to save all these children. It's not. But I think what the story does is it does place an emphasis on awareness that, hey, fentanyl is out there, meth is out there. And if you have a situation where you've got parents that are obviously addicted and they are responsible for offspring, if they are responsible for dependents, that may not end up all that well. And by that, I mean the kids might end up dead. So that's kind of the harsh reality, right? We can't expect a parent who is actively using multiple times a day to remember to safely store their drugs. And we can't expect that to happen 100% of the time. I think any addict with the best intentions on a good day is going to remember 1 out of 10 times, 1 out of 20 times, depending on what kind of run they're on. You know what I mean? Even a mother in recovery and currently using a lockbox said it would be hard to use while on fentanyl because they're just, all they're doing is focused on, getting that next fix and how they're feeling in the moment. Kids, it's like that one parent showing, hey, her niece, she's using and she can't really work out the, bits and pieces to get her kids to school, maybe clothes, maybe food, maybe a roof over their head, those kind of just small little life things that you got to work on to try and provide for your kids. When it comes to fentanyl per se and that type of drug, I would say, no, they're not good enough. The lockboxes, because they aren't always used properly. It's a tool. And to me, it's a tool that is, good intentions, but that's how all this stuff always goes. Best of intentions. Hey, we hope that you can get off drugs, but since you can't, let's go ahead and just give you a clean needle so you can, continue shooting up and, not get some, infection. wouldn't want that. The overdose dose that you might get, we're not going to really focus on that part. But, at least you're sticking a clean needle into your arm, or your toe or your whatever it is, your eyebrow, wherever they stick it to do their thing, right? So children have rights too. They should have rights, and they should have somebody who's looking out for them when the parents are not doing it. And that's where I think something like this gives people a sense of false hope from the standpoint of, well, I've got a lockbox. This should all work out fine. I mean, it's just,
was terrifying.
You are treating people as if they are responsible adults, responsible parents, when you know damn well they're on drugs, and you know damn well when people are on drugs, they can't be responsible parents. So that's where that fine line that the one lady talked about, that's where that fine line is. And I don't know what the answer is, but what I would say as a parent who's lost a son, granted he was 27, be 29 today, what I would say is that awareness is kind of everything. If you've got parents that are in a situation where they're actively using and they've got little kids, put on high alert. I don't know what else to do. I'm not somebody that's in the welfare system or child protective services or whatever, but know that a lockbox isn't going to do it. And so many of the tools that folks have aren't going to do it. But just know that this may not end up well. So whatever the responsibilities are there, take them seriously. And that's about all you can do. And you can push back on all this ridiculous harm reduction nonsense that doesn't end up working, that just allows people to continue their addiction. Instead, push them towards, hey, you know what? In order to be a good parent, maybe you should, get off all this stuff. Maybe you should try and figure out a way to becoming sober so that your parenting skills can shine. Going to allow you to shine with your parenting skills. Here's how we're going to do that. Detox, treatment. You go down that road instead of, hey, here's a clean needle. I don't want to see you getting infection in your arm. You know what I mean? So those kind of things, that's what I would recommend. That's it for me. All right. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next segment. Bye for now.
For the next 4 years, outgoing Governor Jay Inslee is